As Jim Morrison of The Doors said, no one here gets out alive. We're all going to be born, we're all going to live, and we're all going to die. The thing is, do you want to have agency and decide what is going to happen through that dying process, or do you want to leave it up to strangers? This is something that no one really wants to talk about, but it's very important, and so today we're going to get into it. I'm Ellen Mitchell, your heels on the ground in the Miami-Fort Lauderdale area. And on this channel, we talk about everything probate, guardianship, senior relocation, out-of-state sellers, and more. Today, we're going to be talking about healthcare advance directives, the patient's right to decide. This is something that's very tricky because most people do not want to talk about this, and the conversations wind up happening when someone gets a healthcare diagnosis that could be very serious, or they don't happen at all. The best time to have these conversations is at a calm, relaxed time where you can sit down with your family and really talk about what it is that you want. One of the things that you would want to talk about is a living will. And what a living will is, it gives someone the authority to make medical decisions on your behalf if you're unable to. It could be that you're in a car accident and someone needs to be able to make medical decisions about what they do or don't do. You're not really giving the person the authority to make the decisions themselves. You're letting that person know what you do and do not want. Do you want to be put on life support? Do you want blood transfusion? Are there certain things that are religious that you're against that you don't want done? And so you really want to think about who is that person in the moment of crisis that would be able to carry out your decisions. Is it a spouse? Is it an adult child? Is it a close friend? And it is recommended that you have two people, a first and a second, because the first could be out of town, they could be unavailable, and in an emergency situation, you have to be able to have someone that can make those decisions quickly. The second thing is a durable power of attorney. And a lot of these things are not in the case of death. It could just be in the case of an accident that you're unable to function for yourself for a period of time. For example, somebody has a stroke and they're in the hospital and they're recovering, but they're not yet able to pay their bills, make decisions about their finances. And so unless you're on that bank account, you can't go in and pay their bills on their behalf. You may not have the money in your account to cover their bills. So that durable power of attorney gives them a time frame when you're unable to make those decisions for yourself to go in and act on your behalf. Again, these are big decisions, financial decisions, medical decisions, and you want to make sure, I've seen it done, where people list people and they've never had those conversations with the people. So somebody gets a call and says, hey, you are June Smith's durable power of attorney, and June Smith never knew that she was this person's durable power of attorney. She doesn't even know where their bank is, what money that they have. She has no idea what needs to be done. So it's really important to have these private conversations. People ask, can I do this myself? Or do I have to hire an attorney? You don't have to hire an attorney, but I would strongly suggest that you do hire an attorney because the way that these documents are executed are different from state to state. Some states require that the documents are notarized. Some states don't require that they're notarized. Some states require that there are two witnesses. Some states require none. So I would definitely go with an attorney and make sure that all of the paperwork complies in the state in which you domicile or live. Then we've got the do not resuscitate, called the DNR. And the DNR gives very explicit medical instructions. It says if the person wants to be put on life support, if the person wants to be fed if they're unable to feed themselves. Really, really difficult decisions. But I can tell you from personal experience, I was my mother's healthcare surrogate. I was her power of attorney, and I was the person listed on the DNR. And my mother was a type 1 diabetic. She had been on dialysis for 6 years, and she had an event where she was no longer clear of mind. Having to implement her decision to have her taken off of dialysis was probably the most difficult decision that I made in my entire life. And my sister and I are the only 2 children, but I was the one with the legal authority. Thankfully, we were in agreement, and I looked at that document again and again, and it very clearly said that if there was no chance of her recovering, and in this case, she had been taken off of the kidney transplant list, so there was no chance of her recovering. She was continuing to be hospitalized after hospitalized because of problems with the fistula and the dialysis. She was in pain all of the time, and she was unable. Her whole life was going to dialysis, being at the hospital, and sleeping. It was a very, very difficult decision. We consulted with the doctors. We're Jewish. I consulted with the rabbi, and I kept going back to that document that she had written when she was clear-minded and when we were in the attorney's office, and she made her decisions known to me, and I followed what it was that she wanted. So it might seem like something that's very far away that perhaps you don't want to think about, but you can't make those decisions if something happens. In the event that someone has a stroke, they're unable to fill out that paperwork. In the event that they no longer have capacity, come here, Abby, that they're mentally impaired for some reason, they can no longer go back and make those documents. So even for younger people, when my children turned 18, I know so many kids that have gone off to college and had alcohol poisoning, and their parents weren't able to make any medical decisions or have any conversations with the doctors about them because they were adults. So it's really important, even at that age, to have those documents done. And for parents of children that are special needs, even though your child may have autism or another special need, once they're 18 years old, you no longer as a parent have the right to ask or review any medical information for them. So for that and so many other reasons, I strongly recommend that you have those difficult conversations. So once you have the paperwork done, then what? You definitely want to give the copy of the paperwork to the people that you listed as your first and second so that they have that. I also have it on my computer on the cloud so that it could be accessed from anywhere, and my attorney has a copy of it, because if something comes up and you need access to that paperwork, you don't want to be looking for it. In the event of the DNR, once you reach a certain point in life, if you're in an independent living facility or adult living facility, the DNR is printed on yellow paper so that it can be pulled very quickly in case of an emergency. And so you want to make sure if your loved one is hospitalized, if they go into a physical rehab, if they're in an independent living facility, adult living facility, that facility will usually require you to have the document done at that time. And as I said, in Florida, it's on a yellow sheet of paper so that it stands out from everything else. Again, I'm not an attorney, and I would seek legal advice for any documents. They do vary state by state, so the terms that I'm using could be different terms for the same documents in a different state. The other thing that you may want to discuss, and I would strongly encourage you to discuss, is anatomical donation, otherwise known as organ donation. And why is that? I had mentioned earlier that my mother was on dialysis and she was waiting for a kidney. She was on the kidney transplant list for a very long time. Eventually, unfortunately, she was taken off of that list. But she died without a kidney ever becoming available for her. I know that some people have religious reasons for not wanting organ donation, and I would never ask anyone to violate their religious principles. So if that's the case, I'm not talking to you. I completely respect and understand everybody's religious decisions. But if it's not a religious decision and it's just something that you haven't thought about or maybe you're uncomfortable with, I would ask you to consider it or reconsider it. My husband, in fact, was just not a proponent of organ donation, not for any real reason. He just didn't feel like it was something that he would want to do. And seeing my mother die without getting a kidney really changed his mind. And so how do you let that be known? In Florida, on your driver's license or state ID, you can note that you're an organ donor. You can also have it done on your paperwork. And it is important to let your loved ones know verbally and in writing that you do want your organs donated. So just something else to think about, something you may have thought about but may not have put in writing. And I have to say, my mother probably would have been here today had she received a kidney when she was well enough to have received a kidney. So hopefully I haven't depressed you too much. I know we've talked about a lot of things today and a lot of things that are not easy to discuss. I would encourage you to leave any comments, questions, suggestions. I'm always learning to look and grow, and if you have ideas for future episodes or anything that you want me to elaborate on, please let me know in the comments. Also, I'm not an attorney, so it's very important that you consult an attorney. I'm giving you my perspective and my life experience, but these forms differ state by state. It could be very different. They may be called different things. So I would always defer to your attorney. I'm a resource, but the attorney is the professional in that instance, and I would always defer to the legal advice and seek legal advice when making these types of big decisions. Thank you so much.